President Obiang, thank you for joining me here in the studio.
Gracias.
Tell me what oil has meant to your country. Billions of dollars have been pouring into Equatorial Guinea since about 12 or 13 years now. And once you described it as like the manna from heaven that sustained the Jews in the desert, an Old Testament referral.
First of all, I would like to thank you. You're a very, very prestigious reporter. Your question is very important to me because oil has actually been a blessing to our nation. Because Equatorial Guinea was one of the poorest nations in the whole continent. Because we discovered oil, today we are now the third or fourth richest nation on the African continent and around the world.
Well, thank you for your explanation, and thank you for your compliment. But you know, I'm a Western reporter, and I'm going to ask you some pesky questions. So, if you say that oil has benefited your country so much, how then do you account for the fact that some 80% of your country people are still in dire, dire poverty? They don't have access, many of them, to clean water. They make perhaps $2 a day. They don't all have electricity. And it's still very poor for the vast majority of your people in this tiny little country. So why are people still so poor?
Those who do criticize us are basing their judgment on outdated information, and certainly haven't visited Equatorial Guinea for themselves to find out about all the good things that are there. For example, the information that the population of Equatorial Guinea is living below $1 a day. That's not true.
I said $2.
It's completely fabricated.
All right, so that is what you say as the president, but many independent organizations and independent diplomats say what I just said. And the question is, why is so much money going into your accounts? Some 600 million, according to independent organizations and observers.
The critics who are saying these things cannot show that I have so much money in my account. And just what accounts are they referring to? I don't have any special or private accounts. All this is false. It's completely invented.
How do you account for Equatorial Guinea being somewhere towards the very end of the list? In other words, one of the most corrupt countries in the world, according to Transparency International. It's somewhere around 172 out of 183 countries.
I'll keep saying the same thing. Critics are referring to the past. I can assure you that today, Equatorial Guinea has actually improved on political liberties, on economic development and infrastructure.
Well, again, let me continue on this money situation. Your son, Teodorus, has been accused of corruption, embezzlement, extortion and money laundering. And the French authorities have issued an international arrest warrant for him on these money laundering charges.
I believe this is all the work of our enemies. First of all, my son, even before he became a politician, he's always been a businessman. He has his own private business activities. But when he became a politician and entered into government, he produced an accounting of all of his properties, both here in the States as well as in France, all of which was actually acquired long before he got into government.
Well, then the question is, how does your son in Equatorial Guinea have a $180 million mansion, this is in France, 11 luxury cars, Bugattis, Ferraris, Rolls-Royce, Maserati, a $3 million clock, and a lot of things in the United States adding up to about $315 million. Mansions, jets, Ferraris, Michael Jackson memorabilia. I mean, how does your son get that much money just as a minister?
I'll say it again. He did not achieve all this as a minister. He was a businessman before he became a minister. He has his own businesses in Equatorial Guinea, And he has some companies in Malaysia as well. He has his personal finances that he manages, but there are no signs or any proof that he had actually embezzled any government property or government money. The moment he became minister, he contributed a great deal into the coffers of the government's administration.
Do
you think corruption is a problem in your country?
The government has actually established laws that prohibit corruption, and I believe that in Equatorial Guinea we are very serious about prosecuting anyone involved in corruption. So no, it's not a problem in Equatorial Guinea.
All right, well, I've allowed you to give your say, and you've seen all the evidence that we have presented from the other side. Now let me ask you about political situation there. You are, I believe, now in your 4th term, correct?
Posiblemente.
Possibly.
That's a long time. You've introduced yourself constitutional reforms and referendum, which made a maximum of 2 7-year terms. Under that equation, you should end your term by 2016. That will have left you in power for about 30 years or so. Will you step down when the constitutionally mandated time is up? Will you step down in 2016?
First of all, Western democratic nations cannot understand circumstances where someone stays in power for a long time. But in Africa, there exists what we call a person's charisma. Because when I took power, it was in order to face a very difficult situation which was on the brink of exterminating the country. The transformations I carried out were by consensus of all political forces in the country. They weren't laws I imposed, but decisions based on consensus with all the political parties in the nation and their leaders. Therefore, as regards the problem of what the new constitution provides, which is only 2 terms, that's a reality that will be carried out at this time. But of course, because the law is the law, therefore there are those who practice law, and they will know exactly whether I should continue into the next phase or not, because the law may not take effect retroactively.
Oh my goodness, you're raising the possibility of running again, but you yourself have got this, you just mentioned me, 2 7 years, and you're in your 4th term.
It is not me, it's the people. The people decide.
But Mr. President, there's a constitutional referendum, 2 7-year terms. Will you step down in 2016?
That's why I say it depends on the people.
How can it depend on the people? It's a law.
Because it's not a personal problem of my will, because we work based on the will of the people. The people decide. The people have approved the Constitution, which determines the 2 terms. But you have to take into account that the law does not take effect retroactively. Nevertheless, if the people decide that I can present myself in the next stage in order to fulfill what the law says, that's the people's will.
Wow. Well, you're presenting a scenario where you could be in power forever.
I am not the one. It is the people.
Do you think the people want you to be in power for longer?
That's what the people will have to decide in the future.